Hello, people. Welcome to Illo Talk. I am Corey Kerr, and I want to talk to you today about how I steal techniques. Specifically, I want to talk about how I made this thing that you can see here. Eh, eh. And there's a part of this that I reverse engineered some ink work from Arthur Adams. And there's a piece that he did that I'll talk about in a minute. But I want to kind of go through like the thinking that I have and how I reverse engineer this so that you guys can not copy other people's work, but reverse engineer techniques and styles and learn things kind of in a similar way to be able to kind of adapt what people are doing that you might want to learn. So one of the things that I've noticed about Arthur Adams is that his stuff is incredibly detailed, but he's organized his highlights and his midtones and his shadows in such a way that he's able to organize that detail and it doesn't feel massively overwhelming. And so if you look at first, it just seems like just kind of like a code that nobody could crack. He is incredibly good. And I am not saying that I've gotten even remotely close to how good he is, nor will I in this lifetime. I don't know, because he's also continuing to improve as well. But one of the things that I like about what he does is his application of texture. And so his application of texture is really interesting because he uses texture as a way to increase or decrease the brightness of an area so that he can define the form with shadows and midtones and highlights. And so where a lot of beginning artists apply texture kind of flatly, it's kind of, here's the pattern and they kind of apply it, or worse, they don't understand what they're doing, and so they'll use, a brush in Photoshop or Procreate or something that does some kind of texture and just put it on real flat. And so one of the things that I like to do is try to figure out why something is working, right? And I ask myself two questions. What are they doing that I'm not doing? And what are they not doing that I am doing? And as I was going through some of this artwork, and I'll say that on the internet, you can find most of these images on Arthur Adams' Twitter account. He shares a lot of his behind the scenes as well, so you can see like the buildup of the pencils and the inking process, and he'll do detailed shots of things as well, which is helpful. But in asking those questions, what am I doing that they're not doing? What are they doing, or what am I not doing that they are doing? You're able to kind of close that gap between what you're doing. And so one of the things that I noticed was there's a particular image that is right here, and this stood out to me. It was in a book that I got. I actually bought it from Ryan Otley, and there was a bunch of collaborators that got together and they drew this book. And Arthur Adams had some pinups in it, and this pinup, it's called Space Girl. It's got a girl riding kind of a space dinosaur or something. But one of the things that really jumped out to me was this pattern that he has of kind of the texture, or the different types of textures that he's got. And so there are areas of this where you can see the muscles, and you can see that the form curves and then turns a corner and begins to curve in a different direction. And so I looked at that and I was really trying to understand like how that worked. And I think one of the best ways to understand how something works is try to apply what you think you understand from it into a piece of your own. And so that's how we got to this. But before I get there, what I noticed was that there's 3 different types of scales. So if you look at the darker scales, I'm not gonna talk about the other types of texture that are on here. You can see that there's mountains and there's 3 or 4 different types of armor or skin or texture on the beast itself. But what I want to talk about is the darker scales, and you can see that they happen in ribbons on the shoulder. It looks very round on the leg. You can see like lines that are happening. Anyway, there's a lot of really interesting things going on. But I noticed that there were 3 different levels of darkness. And so he was controlling his value contrast somehow. And there seemed to be 3 different levels of that value contrast. And so as I looked closer, there were some of those, and if you look kind of near the top of the screen on what would be like the back of the forearm, you can see that they're just like an outline of one of those scales. And then as they get darker or lighter, he's got little hash lines, usually 3 to 5 hash lines inside of that. And a portion of each scale is filled in black, spot black. And so depending on how filled in it is, will make it look darker or mid-tone or highlight. And then I noticed that it's kind of organized. They follow a line. And so even in the middle of a scale, if those things kind of line up, then our eye sees that alignment, and that alignment tends to help us get that implied line or that crease or that change in the form of the surface. So anyway, so I took all that and I started, let's jump over into, turn this off, and we'll jump over into here. And so I kind of started by just kind of mapping out these lines. And so I'll kind of rewind this a little bit. You can see kind of the lighter red, those lines there, those are kind of a path so that I can get my pattern to follow a particular pattern. And then the blue is going to give me my scale pattern. And in this, I was not copying the pattern that Adams used. I went and I looked at some reference of squid and octopus and different kind of sea creatures to get an idea of kind of that. And I found one where I kind of liked this kind of arrow shape. And so you can see that I'm kind of doing that. And I'll kind of go through, I'll speed this up a little bit, go through that pattern, and I lay this out, right? And then I tried to ink it. I tried a couple different things and didn't like how it turned out. And so I kind of went in and did this kind of like scratchy inking that you see here. And then I would fill in parts of it or whatever. And when I zoom back out, it didn't look like I wanted to. And so I realized that I needed to do a little bit more planning with this. And so what I did is I erased that, and then I came in and I started drawing like a heat map. And what I was doing here is I was using yellow for highlights, orange for midtone values, and red for shadow. And so what I went in and I colored based on what I think the highlights and the midtones and the shadow would be based on this, kind of this little topographical map or heat map type of thing. And then I defined, so let me just fast forward while I'm talking here. So I went in and kind of defined areas like this. And what I'm looking at is I'm looking at the idea of kind of a key. And so in the red, I was going to have one type of scale, which was mostly filled in black, with a couple lines in the highlight of each scale. And then in the orange, I would have those crosshatches go perpendicular to each other. The more ink or black that you put in an area, the darker that thing feels. And in the yellow, I would have it just parallel lines or empty, depending on how close to the center or the edge of that yellow was. Now, if a scale crossed over, then I would have that transition based on the color, right? And so I'll kind of fast forward here and show you what I mean. So you can see at the top there, you can see that where the scale is in the red, it's filled in, and where it's in the orange, it has crosshatches. Okay, and then as I move down here and move into the yellow, you can see that it transitions from red to orange to yellow. Even on the same scale, red is going to be filled in black, orange is going to be perpendicular crosshatches, and then yellow is going to be empty or parallel singular crosshatches. Basically, we're darker, midtone, and highlight. And after you do this little heat map on a separate layer and then draw over the top of it, you can then kind of erase things. So even on the one that I'm drawing now where it's red, I still kind of fill in the highlight on that particular scale. I like to zoom in and out to get an idea of what's going on. And let's kind of fast forward through this here so you can kind of see right along the end there. So that's basically what I ended up doing. And let me get all the way down. I think I zoom out here at the end. If I don't, I should. I'll just pull this back up. There we go. We'll zoom out. So you can see that even as it approaches the sword and the mouse, I wanted to have like highlight colors there. And so there's fewer and fewer areas of white. That's how I controlled the tentacles of this. And you can see that technique of putting more or fewer lines down can be used in a number of different ways. But this is one way where I took stuff that I saw from Art Adams, and I do this a lot with a lot of different artists, just trying to figure out like, how are they implying that line, or how are they suggesting the idea of a highlight or a transition. And I really like looking at ink because the colored version of a lot of these illustrations tends to lose some of the you get distracted by the color of things. And so if you're looking at the ink version of these types of things, then you can kind of see a little bit behind the scenes. And I highly recommend getting printed versions of these because the stuff that you're going to find online isn't super great. And so getting bigger prints, or if you can afford it, getting originals. I have a lot of originals. I wish I had an Art Adams. I don't have an original Art Adams. But I do have a fairly large print of that Space Girl that was in that book. And I wish I could show you that right now, but unfortunately, my house flooded and my studio has been moved to the garage and all my books are boxed up, but sometime in the future. Anyway, so go reverse engineer work that you like and learn from it what you can learn. And don't copy other people's things, but use what you learn from other people's things to create your own. Now, I'm not suggesting that Art Adams does like a heat map or topographical map of the things. I'm not sure exactly how he does that. I don't know. Maybe he's sacrificed something to the Eldritch gods that gives him the ability to just make things look incredible with ink. He seems to have just an uncanny ability to do these types of things. But you can even see in this that, in the heart outline in the background as it approaches the edges of other things like the Ethernet cord or the wings or whatever, that I wanted to have it sort of fade in and fade out, but I don't want any gradients. I want all solid colors because I want to use this for like screen printing or other types of things. So you can see that I'll kind of break that line up, and it suggests the idea of a fade without actually having a fade. Same thing with the black cloth. I don't want a lot of just really bright white highlights, and I don't want just a wash of black. You can see on my vest, my Aurora vest here that I've got, that there are different highlights and shadows. Even though this is all black, there are areas that are darker and lighter. And in being able to depict those things, you want to kind of suggest that, but you don't want to necessarily look shiny or anything. And so I didn't do a ton of really bright. I had those areas of white where I would suggest the edge or a fold or a turn. And then I would kind of break that up with a lot of like tiny little hashing lines there. So anyway, just some things I'm playing with. I'm going to do quite a few of these over the next couple months. I'm already most way through a second one, and these will be available for sale at some point in time. I'd love to hear in the comments if you're interested in this or other thing that I'm doing, what type of products you'd like those on. I'm partial to t-shirts, but if you're looking for prints or if you want me to collect them in a book, I'm going to do somewhere between 22 and 40 of them. Just let me know. Prints, postcards, books, t-shirts, that type of thing would be really helpful to know because it takes some time to set up the products. And if you are not on my email list, make sure that you get on my email list, which is just CoreyKerr.com/email, so that you can see the announcement of when I release these things for sale. And if you like this, share it, like it, all the things that you do to tell the algorithm to show it to other people. And we will catch you guys later. Go make things.
This is Philip Time.